Tough times in Chicago right now. The Blackhawks struggling, and Connor Bedard going to miss some time. Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks joins us to talk about the injury and how the Blackhawks will handle it. Plus, what does it mean for the development of Connor Bedard? We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman. And Jack, not an easy time for hockey fans in Chicago. Fill us in on the status of Connor Bedard. What happened and how long are they expecting him to be out of the lineup?
Yeah, Gil, I wish I was coming on the show under better circumstances. Always love jumping on to talk hockey with you, so thanks for having me on. But yeah, it is a very tough time to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. Not only is Connor Bedard the latest one out, but they now have 9 players on injured reserve, Gil. And it's not just 9 pieces, it's 9 valuable members of this Blackhawks squad. Basically, their top 3 forward lines and their top defenseman in Seth Jones. It has just gotten ridiculous, but the one that hurts the most, obviously, is Connor Bedard going down against the New Jersey Devils along with Nick Foligno. A tough incident there with defenseman Brendan Smith for the Devils. I didn't think it was a dirty hit. I know some people feel differently about it. I do also think it's a little bit of a learning moment for 18-year-old Connor Bedard in situations like that. Going up against a big defenseman, you got to keep your head up, but a very unfortunate result. Seems like the timeline for Bedard now with a fractured jaw is what we learned. Seems like he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. We didn't get an official timeline or anything from the Blackhawks organization or from head coach Luke Richardson, but kind of based on what we've seen with players who have gone through similar circumstances over the past few years, their timelines have been somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks. So looks like we're going to be missing Bedard for a little bit of a stretch here, which is really unfortunate because that was the only reason Blackhawks fans were really still tuning into this team with all the injuries that they have surmounted the last few weeks. And now that Bedard's out, it's just truly unbelievable, Gil.
How does this affect Bedard? I would assume there can be some positives as well as some negatives coming out of him having to miss a little bit of time.
Yeah, I do think this will give him a little bit of a fresher. I'm sure it was a tough stretch for him going through where he really had to be the head honcho for the Blackhawks because of all the injuries. I mean, just on this 5-game road trip alone, Gil, not only did the Blackhawks lose all 5 games, but they lost Anthony Beauvillier, Tyler Johnson, Taylor Radish, Connor Bedard, of course, and Nick Foligno. And he really didn't have any true top line players to play with. So yes, this is obviously an unfortunate circumstance. You would much rather have him playing on a consistent basis, even if it, isn't with ideal line mates, but I'm sure he's frustrated to not be able to play and not be able to go and give it his all each and every night for this Blackhawks team. And looks like he's going to have a pretty decently length absence, but I think this will give him an opportunity to kind of wind down a little bit, learn from afar at the same point in time, kind of get some visuals from maybe up in the press box or maybe just watch a lot more film and just get a different perspective of the game as an 18-year-old. So yeah, we'd much rather have him on the ice, but I still do think there are some things that he can learn from the situation. And also probably a good chance for him to get a little bit of a rest, knowing that this is his first season in the NHL, first year going through the grind as a professional. I think this will ultimately, help take care of some of his other body parts. I know that he's trying to rest up for that.
As far as you mentioned, 9 players out of the lineup, who is expected back the soonest possibly?
Yeah, it does look like Seth Jones has been skating here as of late, which is definitely a good sign. Joey Anderson is someone who he's not the most known player that's on injured reserve, but someone that was playing well before he went on IR as well. So there have been some guys who actually skated after Blackhawks practice yesterday. Tyler Johnson was one of them as well. So it does look like the Blackhawks are going to get some help here soon. But until that happens, Gil, I mean, they really are icing an AHL lineup. Like, who's going to be on the top line today against Calgary? Jason Dickinson's probably our top line center. And yeah, he's having a breakout year, but his career high in goals prior to the season was 9. Philip Kurashev's playing on our top line. Yeah, he's having a really good year too, but his previous career high in points was 25. These are the players the Blackhawks are left stuck with, and they really just don't have any options because they're just so decimated with injuries at this point. And that's kind of led to them having to go and bring in some other players from other areas too.
Is there a particular player who has stepped up? I mean, I know the team isn't winning, but is there a guy who has taken full advantage of the opportunities these injuries have presented and really, made a mark on the coaching staff who said, hey, we got to plug this guy in somewhere?
Yeah, he was actually injured a couple of weeks ago himself too, but all season long when he's been healthy, Alex Vlasic as a rookie has been unbelievable on the back end for the Blackhawks. And actually going into his deeper analytics and such, he's ranking out as one of the better defensive defensemen in the entire NHL, which is seriously so impressive for a guy who's not being able to play with Seth Jones, a veteran defenseman. He's really having to be the anchor out there on the blue line as a rookie, and he's being excellent, not only with the long reach of his at 6'6", 6'7". We knew those were going to be the things that he was going to be good at defensively, but his puck moving has really taken another step. He's getting opportunities on the top power play unit, even though that's not really his bread and butter because Seth Jones is out right now. So he's just getting more of these opportunities because the Blackhawks are having to plug him into those situations. And it feels like he's really making the most of it. And we're seeing noticeable strides in his game. So it's been tough, no doubt about it, but there have been a few bright spots. And when it's a young player like Alex Vlasic, who the Blackhawks organization and Blackhawks fans have some high hopes for, it's been awesome to see what he's developed into thus far and has to have a lot of people excited what he could be when games become more meaningful for this Blackhawks team a couple years down the road.
How is the coaching staff being viewed? I mean, obviously the team is struggling. The injuries and the rebuilding situation are part of it. Does the coaching staff still have the support of the front office and the fans?
I think they have to at this point in time. And there was a little bit of a stretch before all of these injuries went down that the Blackhawks defense was kind of allowing the same things to happen time and time again. And that kind of reached a point really the first time under Luke Richardson's tenure where it was like, okay, something feels like it has to change here, not making a change in the coaching staff, but we just can't let these same goals happen time and time again. So that felt like the first time where maybe Luke Richardson was under the microscope a little bit, but with all these injuries, man, I mean, this Blackhawks team was expected to be bad, but with this roster, they just can't compete against anyone. So it's just really, really difficult to go and grade or judge the coaching staff when you have all of these circumstances going on right now. So I think that time will come probably next year where we do need to see some progress, right? We do need to see this team take the next step at some point in time. We wanted to see it this year, but just it doesn't look like that's going to happen, unfortunately. But there is going to become a meaningful time period where Luke Richardson, we like what we hear in the locker room, and it feels like he's the right guy for this situation. But as this team, like I said, takes the next step, we do need to see a little more proof from him that he is the right guy. The time for that, though, Gil, just isn't right now.
The trade deadline is now on the horizon, at least. I mean, we're in the 2024 part of the season. What do you expect the Blackhawks to do, if anything, come the trade deadline?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Knock on wood. I hope by that time period they'll be a little bit healthier, and that will give them some more options. But right now, the Blackhawks have had to go and get some pieces from other teams. Not that they've really had to do much buying. They gave up a 7th-round pick for Rem Pitlick the other day. They brought in Jacob Megna on defense, also brought in Zach Sanford off of waivers. I think the Blackhawks would still like to be a little bit of sellers at the deadline. I'm not exactly sure who that would kind of entail. Maybe someone like Tyler Johnson, if he's healthy. Taylor Hall could have been in that boat, but he's obviously out for the year as well. Ideally, the Blackhawks probably have a couple of pieces that they'd like to sell off to get some more draft picks or some prospects, but that's all going to depend on the injuries because they're just, if the trade deadline was right here, right now, Gil, there's no way they'd be in a position to sell off pieces because they're barely able to put a roster together as it is.
Wow. All right, Jack, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to hear some more about Connor Bedard's injury and who can take advantage of these opportunities with so many guys out, go and check out Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you can get your podcasts. You can find the Locked On Blackhawks account on X at @LO_Blackhawks. If you want to check out my personal, you can find me at Jack_Bushman2 on X as well.
All right, Jack, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, Gil. Thank you for having me on.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, so Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite part of the Gametime experience, you go on the app and you can see the view from your seats before you purchase the tickets. That is a huge advantage. And look, they have all-in prices, so you see your total up front and you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Gametime even has deals right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.